In the cold, lonely lands of Alaska, where snow covers the mountains and the wind whispers through the valleys, Parker Schnabel once again stood facing the unknown. For years, he had searched these lands for gold, driven by passion and the memory of his grandfather, John Schnabel. Mining wasn't just his profession, it was in his blood. But this time, what he found was not just gold. It was something that changed everything he knew about the earth beneath his feet. The morning began like any other day on the mining site. Machines roared, the ground shook, and the team worked with their usual focus. But deep inside, Parker felt something different about this valley. Locals called it the Cursed Valley. They said machines stopped working here for no reason, and strange sounds came from underground at night. Parker never believed in such tales. He believed in hard work, science, and evidence. But that day, even his confidence began to fade as strange things started happening. The ground sensors showed signals they had never seen before. Metallic readings, ways stronger than gold, were flashing across the monitor. Parker's geologist looked confused. "Sir, these readings don't make sense. It's showing something solid and reflective, but it's not gold." Parker raised his eyebrows. "Let's dig deeper," he said firmly. The excavator moved forward, its giant arm cutting through layers of frozen soil. Then suddenly, a loud metallic thud echoed across the valley. Thunk! Everyone froze. "Stop the machine!" Parker shouted. The air was suddenly silent, except for the cold wind rushing past their ears. Dust slowly settled, and something metallic shone faintly beneath the ground. Parker stepped closer. The reflection wasn't like any gold vein he had ever seen. It was dull, dark, and covered in rust. He knelt down, brushed away the soil, and said quietly, "This doesn't look like gold." The camera crew zoomed in. Everyone gathered around, unsure what they were looking at. A large, rusted metal surface was buried deep beneath the earth. It wasn't a natural rock. It looked man-made. The edges were sharp, and strange patterns were visible under the dirt. Parker called his geologist. "Take a sample," he said. The geologist nodded, chipped off a small piece, and put it into a container. When the lab results came back, everyone stood silent. "This metal is not normal," the scientist said. "It contains traces of gold, but also other elements not found in ordinary earth metals. It's unknown." Parker stared at the report in disbelief. "Unknown? What do you mean?" The scientist sighed. "We've never seen a metal like this before. It's not natural." That night, the site was quiet. The machines were turned off, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. Parker sat near the dig site, holding the old map that had led him here, the same map his grandfather had once mentioned, marked with a red circle and the words, "Cursed Valley." Parker whispered to himself, "Grandpa, what did you know about this place?" The next day, digging continued. The crew was nervous, but Parker's determination pushed them forward. As they went deeper, the metallic structure grew larger and clearer. It seemed to form a circular pattern, almost like a massive sealed door. Strange symbols were carved along its surface, symbols no one could read. The cameraman zoomed in on them, capturing every detail. A worker joked nervously, "Looks like part of a spaceship, huh?" But Parker didn't laugh. He ran his fingers over the carvings and said softly, "This isn't natural. Someone made this." As the team continued clearing the dirt, a section of the ground suddenly collapsed, revealing a hollow space beneath. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell of earth and metal. Parker bent down, shining his flashlight inside. It looked like a tunnel or chamber. "There's something here," he said. Everyone leaned closer, but the darkness inside seemed endless. Parker decided to call in advanced scanning equipment. The 3D ground radar showed something that left everyone speechless. Beneath the metallic door was a dome-shaped cavity about 30 feet deep. It was perfectly symmetrical.
"This isn't a natural formation," said the scientist. "Nature doesn't make perfect circles like this." Parker took a deep breath and said, "We dig tonight." As night fell, clouds gathered above the mountains. The valley grew darker, colder, and quieter than ever. Floodlights lit up the site, casting long shadows on the snow. The machines came alive once
more. The ground shook as they dug deeper, inch by inch, toward the mysterious structure. Then it happened again. Another metallic clang echoed through the valley. The excavator stopped. Parker climbed down and brushed away the dirt with his hands. Beneath the soil was a round metal lid. "This is it," he whispered. "Open it!" The hydraulic cutter sparked as it sliced through the rusty surface. A heavy metallic smell filled the air. The sound of grinding metal was deafening. Then suddenly, crack! The cutter broke through. A loud hiss echoed as a blast of freezing air poured out from the chamber below. Everyone took a step back. Inside, half buried in the dirt, was a black cube. About 2 feet across, smooth as glass, with glowing blue symbols etched on its surface. "What is that?" whispered one of the crew members. Parker slowly approached it. "It's not gold," he said. "It's something else." He reached out and touched the surface. The moment his hand brushed the cube, the symbols flickered and began to glow brighter, one by one, like a code being activated. Everyone gasped. The cameraman's screen started glitching, and strange distortions appeared on the feed. "Sir, the camera's acting weird." Parker said firmly, "Keep recording." The cube pulsed faintly, as if alive. A low humming sound filled the air. The scientist quickly took readings. "There's a strong electromagnetic field coming from it," he said. "It's interfering with our equipment." Parker didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the glowing symbols. "If this isn't gold," he murmured, "then maybe it's something much older. Or much bigger." Lightning flashed across the sky, and for a brief moment the entire valley lit up in a blue glow. The machines stopped one by one. The only sound was the wind howling through the mountains. Parker turned to his crew and said, "We're not stopping. We came here for gold, but we might have found history." As the storm raged, the cube began to vibrate slightly. The team panicked. "Sir, it's moving!" someone shouted. Parker stood firm. "Don't touch it, just observe." Suddenly, a bright flash of light erupted, blinding everyone. The camera went black. When the video came back, the cube had stopped glowing. It was silent again. But something felt different. The air was heavy, charged with energy. The scientist whispered, "Whatever this thing is, it's not from here." The next morning, the sun rose over the snowy peaks. The valley looked calm, as if nothing had happened. But when Parker arrived at the site, a convoy of black vehicles was already waiting. Men in suits stepped out, carrying briefcases and scanners. One of them walked up to Parker and said, firmly, "Mr. Schnabel, stop excavation immediately. This area is now under federal control." Parker frowned. "Federal control? This is my claim." The man opened a folder and showed him a document marked Restricted Geological Zone. Within minutes, the area was surrounded by tape. The men examined the cube carefully, taking readings and photographs. A woman in a white lab coat said, "There's an unusual electromagnetic pulse coming from it. We need to contain it." Parker watched silently as they placed the cube into a lead box. "That's mine," he protested. "We found it." But the man replied coldly, "This is a matter of national security." The crew was forced to hand over their cameras and memory cards. Every piece of footage they had recorded was confiscated. "This footage is now government property," one of the officials said. Parker stood there, staring at the ground where the cube had been. His face was filled with disbelief. "We discovered it," he said softly, "but it's not ours anymore." Within hours, the news leaked. Social media exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Parker Gold Find and hashtag Alaska Mystery were trending everywhere. Some said Parker had found alien metal. Others claimed he had uncovered a lost civilization. Blurry screenshots of the cube spread online. People tried to decode the symbols, comparing them to Egyptian and Mayan scripts. Theories flooded Reddit, YouTube, and Twitter. Experts began appearing on news channels and podcasts. Some said it was evidence of an ancient, advanced civilization. Others believed it was a secret government experiment buried long ago. A few scientists suggested it could be a fragment of a meteorite that somehow formed into a perfect cube. But one question remained unanswered. How could a natural object have perfect edges and glowing symbols? Parker remained silent for days. The world kept asking questions, but he didn't respond. Then, one morning, he posted a single message online. "Some things aren't meant to stay buried." That single line sent shockwaves through the internet. Millions of people began searching for clues. Videos, debates, and theories appeared everywhere. Some believed Parker had been forced into silence. Others thought the government was hiding something far greater than gold. Weeks later, Parker appeared in a brief interview. He looked tired, but calm. "I was looking for gold," he said, "but I found something else. Something we don't understand. Maybe that's why everything was shut down."
So fast. He paused for a moment, his eyes distant. "Sometimes the real treasure isn't what glitters, but what lies hidden." The interviewer asked, "Do you think it was man-made?" Parker smiled faintly. "I don't know," he said, "but I do know one thing. It wasn't just a rock. It was something alive." After that, he never spoke publicly about the incident again. The site was permanently closed, armed guards surrounded the area, and no one was allowed near it. Satellite images of the valley were blurred online. The government called it a geological research zone, but many believed something much bigger was being covered up. Months later, strange reports began surfacing from nearby villages. People claimed they could see faint blue lights flickering in the sky above the mountains at night. Some said their radios picked up odd signals when facing the valley. Others swore they heard a low humming sound coming from beneath the ground. The legend of the cursed valley had returned, stronger than ever. Today, no one knows what really lies beneath those mountains. Was it an artifact from an ancient civilization, a piece of alien technology, or a forgotten human experiment buried by time? Whatever it was, Parker's discovery had changed how people looked at Alaska forever. Some secrets, as Parker once said, aren't meant to stay buried. And maybe, somewhere deep under the frozen ground, that black cube still waits, silent, watching, and waiting for someone brave enough to uncover its truth again. Parker didn't sleep much after that day. Every time he closed his eyes, he could still see that black cube, the faint glow of its blue symbols, and the way the air had felt charged when he touched it. He kept hearing that low hum in his head, like it had somehow imprinted itself on his memory. Weeks passed, but he couldn't stop thinking about it. The officials had told him not to discuss the discovery with anyone. They'd made him sign documents, warning him that the site was now restricted under federal law. Yet, even with all those warnings, his mind refused to rest. He kept asking himself, what was it? Why did they take it? One night, Parker sat alone in his cabin near the mining camp. The fire burned low,
and snow fell quietly outside. He looked at the old map again, the the same one that had led him to the cursed valley. He noticed something strange he hadn't seen before. In the corner of the map, faint letters had been written in pencil, almost faded with time. They read, "The second mark lies where the mountain shadows meet." Parker stared at those words for a long time. Was this a clue? Could there be another site connected to the first? He thought of his grandfather, John Schnabel, the man who had taught him everything about mining. His grandfather used to say, "Sometimes gold isn't what you dig up, it's what you discover along the way." Maybe he had known something about this place too. Maybe that's why he'd marked it on the map. The next morning, Parker called his most trusted friend and crew member, Mitch. "I need your help," he said. Mitch hesitated. "Are you sure, Parker? After what happened, we're not supposed to go near that valley again." Parker nodded. "We're not going to the same place. There's another site, one they don't know about yet." Together, they set out with a small off-road vehicle and basic scanning gear. The roads were rough, covered in ice and snow, but Parker drove with steady determination. After several hours, they reached a narrow gorge between two mountains. The place was silent, untouched, and eerily still. When the sun began to set, the mountain shadows stretched long and wide, and for a brief moment they met at a point near the base of a cliff. "That's it," Parker whispered. They began to dig carefully, just a few feet into the frozen ground. Soon, Mitch's shovel hit something solid. The sound echoed, metal again. But this time, it wasn't a massive structure. It was small, almost like a box. They cleared away the dirt and found a metal container, heavily rusted and sealed tight. Parker brushed away the soil and found faint carvings on the lid, the same strange symbols that had been on the cube. His heart started pounding. "It's connected," he said softly. They loaded the box into the truck and took it back to the cabin. It took hours to open the box. The metal was tough and corroded, but finally the lid creaked open with a sharp metallic sound. Inside, wrapped in an old, weathered cloth, was a small notebook and a round metal disc. The notebook was fragile, its pages yellowed and half-burned, but the writing was still readable in parts. The first page read, "Cursed Valley Project, 1949, authorized by Geological Survey. Research Division, restricted access." Parker's eyes widened. "This isn't new," he said. "They've known about it for decades." The notebook described a secret government project during the late 1940s. It mentioned anomalous metallic readings, unusual electromagnetic activity, and non-terrestrial mineral compounds. It even referenced Object 7B, sealed underground after uncontrolled reactions. Parker realized this must be the same cube they had found. But what shocked him the most was a short entry near the end of the notebook. It read, "The energy within the object reacts to touch. It communicates through light. Attempt to move it resulted in energy discharge. 2 members injured. Site sealed immediately. Classified level Omega." He turned to Mitch. "They tried to open it once, before we did." The metal disc in the box had similar carvings to the cube, but it wasn't glowing. It was cold, lifeless. Still, it seemed like a key or a piece of a larger mechanism. Parker knew he had to be careful. Days later, strange things started happening at the cabin. At night, the lights flickered, even though the generator was working fine. Their compasses spun uncontrollably, and sometimes faint blue flashes lit up the sky above the valley in the distance. Mitch grew uneasy. "Parker, I think we should stop. This isn't normal." But Parker was too deep into the mystery. "You can stop if you want. I need to find out what this means." The next morning, they drove back toward the original site, now blocked off by security fences. Through binoculars, they saw guards patrolling and vehicles parked around the dig area. Something was happening there. Large tents covered the site, and heavy machinery had been brought in. It looked like the government was digging deeper. "What are they doing?" Mitch asked. Parker watched for a while, then said quietly, "They're not just studying it. They're trying to open it." Later that night, they camped near the edge of the forest overlooking the site. From a distance, they saw a bright light of lightning, brighter than lightning, coming from under one of the tents. A humming filled the air, followed by a shock wave that shook the ground. Birds flew from the trees, and a strange ringing echoed through the valley. Then silence. All the lights at the site went out. Parker grabbed his camera and began recording. "Something's happening." But moments later, the sky above the valley glowed faintly blue.
Again, the same glow he had seen on the cube. It spread in waves, rippling through the clouds, and then faded away. The next morning, the site was completely deserted. The guards were gone. The tents were torn, as if something had ripped through them. The ground was scorched in places, and the smell of metal and ozone filled the air. But the cube was gone. There was only a large circular hole where it had once been. Parker and Mitch walked closer, carefully looking around. "It's gone," Mitch said. "They took it." Parker shook his head slowly. "No. Something else happened. Look." He pointed at the walls of the pit. Strange markings, glowing faintly blue, were etched into the soil itself. The same symbols from the cube, but now larger, stretching several feet wide. They pulsed slowly, almost like a heartbeat. Mitch stepped back in fear. "Parker, this is insane, let's leave." But Parker stood there, staring at the glowing marks. "It's still here," he said quietly. "It's under us." That night, he couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that low hum again, deep and rhythmic. It wasn't in the air, it was inside his head. He began to dream of the cube, of symbols moving like rivers of light, of a chamber deeper underground, filled with the same blue glow. He woke up drenched in sweat, gasping for breath. He started writing everything down, every sound, every dream, every pattern he could remember. The symbols, he realized, weren't just random. They repeated in sequences, like a code. Parker began to suspect the cube was not just an object, it was a message. Days turned into weeks. The weather worsened. Snowstorms covered the valley, and the roads became impassable. The government never returned, and the area was quietly erased from maps. People who tried to visit were turned away by research restrictions. But Parker stayed close. He couldn't leave it alone. Then one evening, while reviewing his old camera footage, he noticed something strange. Just before the cube started glowing, there was a faint sound recorded, a sequence of low-frequency pulses. He analyzed the audio and realized it followed a pattern, almost like Morse code. It repeated 3 times, then stopped. He played it over and over. After a while, he recognized it wasn't random noise. It sounded almost intentional. Parker wrote in his notebook, "If this is a message, who sent it, and what are we supposed to do with it?" Mitch eventually left too frightened to stay. But Parker remained. Alone in the cold valley, he kept searching for answers. As months passed,
Stories began to spread again. Tales of glowing lights, strange weather patterns, and whispers of underground vibrations that shook nearby villages. Some people said they saw Parker wandering near the valley at night, carrying a lantern and a camera. Others claimed he disappeared for days at a time, only to return with notebooks full of drawings and symbols. And then, one day, he was gone. When spring came, local rangers found his empty cabin. The notebook was still on the table, open to the last page, It read only one line: "The door has opened." No one ever found Parker after that, but every so often, on